Okay, are we all looking for that soul connection, that bond that's gonna last forever? We want to find our soulmate. Well, I'm here to tell you we have to distinguish the difference between a trauma bond and a soul bond. And in this video, we're gonna really dive deep into that because this topic is so near and dear to my heart. A little backstory: I was on a global psychic line for many years. And then before that, I was in a psychic shop in Vegas, and I have met so many people from all walks of life, different cultures, different beliefs, different challenges, but almost one thing we all have in common, that's trauma bonds. And so I'm here to tell you we can figure that out with some of the things I will help you uncover in this video, so stay tuned. Okay, so welcome back to Zen Penguin, and on this channel we use logical, practical explanations to apply spiritual concepts and have real change in our lives. So let's get to it. Trauma bonds. Number one thing I want to tell you that you will recognize with a trauma bond, and this is the most key aspect, is that you feel like you can't live without them. You feel like when you're with them, it's great, it's the best experience ever, and then when you're away from them, you're just craving, longing, needing, wanting. All those things are projecting something we don't have in ourselves. In every, context, money, food, whatever it is, what we're longing and desiring is because there's a need that we're not filling within ourselves, and so that is a trauma bond. And the hard part about that is that most people really think that's love because they've never experienced love inside themselves. So we're seeking it outside. Okay, so the love connection is going to come from there. But I want to just say one thing. We have to go through trauma bonds to get to the real deal in a lot of cases, because trauma bonds teach us, unfortunately, we live in the third dimension, which is contrast. We need the trauma bond to recognize what isn't love. That's contrast. We learn through negative experiences what we want or what is real or what is true. So we go through a lot of these experiences to really start to heal those trauma places within ourselves, those, let's use a different word, those empty parts of ourselves that we need somebody to fill, and then we start to fill it. In tarot, that's filling your own cup, and that's, like a Queen of Cups, King of Cups type energy. Ace of Cups, if you've ever looked at tarot, it's filling your own cup. And I think there is something in the Bible about that. If there is, I'll put a quote here. So my whole point is that we have to learn to fill our own cup. And so the lower these connections take us inside, the more we cry, the more we desire, the more we obsess. That's just the stronger the bond. But then once we overcome that, that's the more love we have inside of ourselves to start attracting love. So let's get to some examples of what I'm talking about to help you understand, so that we can do the application that I'm about to provide. First, I'd like to help us understand and unpack what I mean by there's something missing within ourselves. That tripped me up for a long time. I had a very high level energy teacher come into my life when I was completely unaware of spiritual concepts at all. Period. I was just corporate America, no anything. So the first teacher I had come to me and I paid really was like super high level, and it took me a lot of years to integrate what she was telling me. And so that's why I want to try to help you unpack this right now. If you are feeling good and going about your day, and I talk a lot about this on the channel, you're at 100% power when you wake up, and then reality fights for your attention, and then you lose some of your power, which is no different in trauma bonding. It is you're used to getting something externally to make you feel good. Okay, so that's the missing part inside yourself, right? And with trauma bonding, you can recognize that because when you're with them, you feel this high level power, which then everybody says, this is my soulmate. And it's really it is a soul mate in a way because it's mating with your soul and making you feel whole, right? But our soulmate will come to us when we're whole in ourselves. And that's why they talk about in like twin flames or soulmate communities that, you know, it's really a journey back to yourself because you're going to fill your own cup. And this is so foreign to people because they're like, I can feel good without anything outside. Like I can feel like I'm high and drunk and all those things inside myself. I'm just using examples. And that I just went to the buffet and had ice cream and I could feel really good and woo-woo inside without any of that externally. Yes. But it's going to take the inward focus. We're learning to cultivate those feelings without needing anything external to dictate them. And so this is no different than trauma bonding. What happens in trauma bonding is that they are igniting us in this sensation that they're our person because they're bringing a polarity into our energy field that we feel whole. And then when they remove that energy, we drop down. And what do we do then? We chase, or we seek, or we obsess because we think in having that back, we're going to feel better because that's love. But really what it is it's showing us that deficit, that matrix thing that can take our power. Just another way to look at it. So I hope that makes sense. So let's move on to an example. So I'm going to use the example of all of the clients I've helped on the phone. So even coaching, or we could even do this extra, all the clients I've ever talked to. They always, if they're calling about love, they do this. And so I'm going to use this pattern to help you understand. I love him. When is he going to call? Okay. Number one psychic thing on any psychic line or shop. When is he going to communicate? And, or commit? One of those two things. And then I go on to, I'll kind of look at the things and give them some information. And the first thing they always say is, that jerk, that, something very negative about the person. Almost always, 99% of the time. No, I really want you to sit with that. What dimension of consciousness is that coming from? Low. High dimensions are love, unconditionally. Nothing changes that. People can be who they are. It doesn't hurt you. Doesn't wound you. And this is so hard to conceive of because we are so used to holding people accountable for their shit. But then second sentence after that is, I told him about himself, that ass or whatever. I told him this is what he has to do, this and that. And on that person's side, because remember, I'm a person that's seen it from a higher place. And so that person, I can tap into their energy, the other person they're talking about, and they're thinking, this is a raging lunatic. I don't want anything to do with this person. And then this person that I'm coaching or on a call with, they're telling me they're a narcissist or they're bad or this and that. And so I'm trying to explain to you that that is a trauma bond because you would never drop out of the state of love. And in the state of love, those type of beliefs and concepts don't exist, period. There's levels to this shit. It's dimensions, okay? And so what you're really upset about is that they took their energy away. And now you're at the lowest state of consciousness and you're battling inside yourself and projecting it onto them. That's a trauma bond. And then they come back and you feel good and they can't sustain that with you. We tend to get smothery or ridiculous with it, thirsty, whatever you want to call it, and they go away again. Or something triggers it because your soul wants you to evolve. It doesn't want this codependency on another person's energy. And that's the craziest part, is the person that I'm coaching thinks that they're a good person and they're love and they do everything for this person and this and that has very little to do with it. You too are siphoning their energy to feel whole. If you can't be very responsive, loving, and caring, so how that call would look just for you to kind of understand, in a healed person, as they get towards the end of a year of coaching with me, we'll use an example, the call would go like, I expressed some things to him and he kind of wiggled away and got squirmy about it, but it didn't even affect me emotionally. I understood that he needs to process or that he's not ready to become the things that I said I need. It's very diplomatic. The ruler of the seventh house is Libra. It's diplomacy. We are, the seventh house is about how we relate to others. So this, reactionary thing we do when we have this power loss from a trauma that we are repressing our power in and then projecting out, we need this from the outside and we don't even realize we're doing it. Once we heal that, then we can have responsible conversations with our needs. I need better communication. I need consistent communication. It's from a responsive place, and you wouldn't believe every single time when you're not needing their energy and doing the push and pull from that, and you do it from a whole place inside yourself and you tell them what you need, they're going to reflect that to you. And if not, the next person's going to pop in and do it, and you don't hold on because it's not a trauma bond. So I know that was a lot to unpack. So let's give it another example, like a real life example, just tit for tat, and then some tips to help you understand how to dissolve that type of bond. Okay, so you meet a guy, you're about a month in, you call him up and he doesn't answer. And you text him like, hey, what's going on? I thought we were going to hang out. And he doesn't respond. The next morning, you wake up after the whole night of ruminating and building cases in your mind, all that psychic darkness going at them, they're going to shut down, period. And then that person that's been ruminating, texting, double text paragraphs, calls the line, the psychic line, gets me, hey, how can I help? Blah, blah, blah. When are they going to communicate? What's going on? Why are they doing this? This is love. This is my soulmate. And I tell them that, well, we're dealing with, after I look at my spread and I understand the energy of what's going on, well, it's kind of a stalemate right now because the energy you're putting out, they're shutting down to. They don't do well with that energy, usually a lot to do with their trauma. So, but you're matched up perfectly, right? And Carl Jung talks about this, animus and anima, our parents, right? So the dynamics we ran with our parents when we were little, we weren't safe and in control, so we created patterns like temper tantrums or whatever to get them to hear us, and as adults unconsciously we're doing the same thing. It's just a power loss. It's not an adult way to have a reciprocal conversation in a healthy way and getting to an understanding. This isn't my person, right? So I tell the person that, hey, this is a stalemate. They don't like kind of the energy you're putting out. I didn't do anything. I said everything nice and perfect, and I just laid out the facts every time. Never did anything. And that's why one of the videos I have on my channel is about the unseen communication, because that's crucial to understand. When you're triggered, you shouldn't say shit, period. Okay? So then they go on to say, but this is my person. I love him. If you're loving him, you have to understand you have to be in the state of love. But right now, you're in the state of trying to shame them almost 100% of the time. And shame is the lowest on the consciousness scale. Put the scale here. I do it a lot, but I just understand from the energy dynamics after doing this for a long time. You're shaming him. His mama shamed him, and what does he do? He shuts down, because if he tried to stand up for himself to his mom, Anima, his mom would go harder, kind of like you're doing. Whoa, you attracted the same person, right? Because we attract our parents, the dynamics. So we can reprogram our body, our unconscious, and our mind from these trauma loops from the original issue. As Jesus said, the original sin, the original cause that separated us from love. And so we're still repeating 3-year-old antics. And these grown women don't even understand, or grown men. I have a lot of men too. So I think you're kind of understanding what I'm saying. Love means you don't leave the state. And I talk about that a lot in the state of being that you need to be in. You don't leave that state of being just because somebody is doing their own, patterns. Okay? You gotta understand, these are unconscious patterns. This person could actually love you, and they're shutting down because they feel your energy smothering, like their mom. And now they have a pattern of shutting down. We don't even know. But you can't even extend grace. Grace is a high vibration. It's right up there with love, joy, peace, right? You just go to your own trauma issues. Men are shit. I always attract the same guy. What the heck is going on? It's just, that's the trauma bond right there. If you can't maintain the state of the higher dimensions, joy, peace, love, grace, and extend that when somebody makes a mistake, or they have their own things going on, you can't put yourself in their shoes, you're taking it personal, trauma bond, period. But if you can maintain not to say you might not be a little irritated and drop down a little bit. Anger is higher than shame and guilt and, you know, sadness, grief, apathy. Anger's up there. Not that you won't be angry, but then you got to get yourself sorted first, because that unseen communication, you want to trigger their central nervous system into their ridiculous patterns, because that's what's going on. And then we keep going at it, and that's the trauma bond. Push, pull, push, pull. I've had clients on the line that have done this for 10 years. And before that, a different person they did it with. So it makes me incredibly sad, because a lot of times what I'm explaining to you right now, they won't get. No. They just want to know, when is he going to call? And anything else I try to tell them, they don't want to hear. So I hope you're hearing me. So now that we kind of get, hopefully, what I'm saying, let's get to some tips and tricks on how to overcome these type of really hardcore bonds that keep us stuck. Well, I just want to point out, the longer you've been doing this, the more that pattern is in your body, and you're repetitively doing it. You know, the unconscious and the nervous system, they are established in these patterns through repetition. A lot of married people have this. You know, and you can stay married to your same person and shift your energy pattern and then let them shift with you. And if they can't, you're going to be strong enough through the dissolution of this trauma bond. Trauma bonds can be dissolved with the same person and become love once you achieve that state. But if they're wanting to go, you won't be trauma bonded anymore, and you'll just move on and find your next person that can start to reflect love with you in deep union and grace and communication, divine feminine and masculine, right? You gotta have it in yourself. And so I just want to point that out, because it doesn't mean you have to throw away your marriage if you're married or your long-term connection. You just got to start doing the tips that I'm kind of trying to lead you to. And so the tip number one is to recognize, obviously we say that in my tips, just recognize it, accept that this is what's happening. You know, this isn't a state of love. Love isn't a romantic notion. It's a state of being. It's a level of consciousness. And so how do I maintain that in this current connection? Well, first you have to start changing the pattern, which is when I'm triggered and reactive and pissed or trying to shame them to do better. And this can work in any trauma bond. This can work with your kids. You got to get yourself sorted inside. You have to stop using the lower dimensions to change things. They won't. God is love. So if you want to be the God of your reality, you got to get to the state of love and watch how people magically, miraculously change. So you just got to get yourself sorted inside and then watch a new pattern unfold. Because when you're up in those dimensions, you wouldn't shame anybody. You wouldn't say things that'll tick them off and you're in this self-sabotaging bullshit. You wouldn't. So the only thing you can do is recognize that you're not capable of doing that and that you're going to work on that, and shut your mouth and stop projecting that everybody else is the problem and really start working on that, because that's the key. Okay, let's get on to some more tips. So the next tip is to start communicating from the lower levels in a different way. I've coach a lot of people that want to make things perfect. So kind of learned how to deal with every type of personality type or archetype that, you know, somebody's dealing with. So like, let's just say that I have somebody who wants to, once they understand this, they're like, oh, I got to perfect this first. That would be a lot of like earth placements, Virgo, Capricorn, Taurus. They want it to be perfect. And, you know, even Aquarius, there's other signs too that do that, but all of us have everything in the chart. So let's just say we all tend to want to be perfect. So once you really understand this, you could actually start sabotaging by saying, I'm not in a good place inside. I can't change this right now. And so I want to give you this tip. Once you're starting to become self-aware and you recognize you're triggered and you want to just keep running away, because the opposite of japping out on somebody is just running away and they're both not good. That's not balance. That is just the push and pull. So we have a little bit of the unconscious running away too. So we have a dominant, I'm going to rage out or I'm going to fly away. And then we have a little bit of a different polarity in us where we do the opposite. So to overcome that, tip number 2 is, from a dysregulated state, tell the person, I'm trying to change this about myself. I don't want to react poorly. Let me get myself sorted. Let's talk about this when we're both kind of good. Let's kind of figure it out together from this state in a different way. Let's love each other from this state, or however you can do it where you're actually trying to do some different communication from a dysregulated lower state in a very, but if it starts to go off the rails, then run until you get yourself sorted. But that would be step 2, is to start to do that, because our nervous system needs repetition in order to change the pattern. So you have to change it sometimes from the, not from shaming, try to get up into that anger or apathy. The apathetic state's the easiest, and start to really tell a person, hey, I'm trying to change this pattern. Let's work on cultivating better feelings before we start to come together and find solutions for our relationship. So that's number 2. So let's get to number 3. So then number 3 is you finally got yourself out of those lower states, and you tell a person, I need consistent communication, like I was telling you before. And this is how a trauma bond breaks. You're in a good place, you tell them what you need, and they mess it up, and you don't get triggered. You don't lose your power. You understand, oh, why didn't I see this the whole time? This has nothing to do with me. Because most trauma bonds are because we think it's because it's a deficiency in us. They don't want us, right? That was my biggest one. He doesn't want me. So, you know, we have to come from it like, oh my God, this has nothing to do with me. This has everything to do with his pattern and what he doesn't, he can't. And so then you tell yourself, I'm safe. I don't need to stay in this. I told him what I need. It's not triggering me that he's not giving it to me. And before you know it, that person leaves your energy field. And once they leave your energy field, we all know what it's like to have a soul contract end. And that's what a trauma bond is, by the way. And so this is the way to consciously get over it. Not just repeat it over and over again until you're sick of it and then you attract the same guy in a different body. This is the way to consciously elevate, release the trauma, fill your own cup, and then have conscious conversations, and then not hold on when you realize this person can't meet me where I'm at. We can't do this healthy soul bonding together. This person still wants to do trauma bonds. They are not healing within themselves. They're still trying to run that dynamic, and you're okay with it. Guess what? God fills that with a new person that can meet you where you're at. So whoever you're with right now, they're exactly what you need, because they're exactly what you're at. They're the yin to your yang. So when people call me, and I'm just going to leave you with this, call me up in any capacity and they say, is this my person? Well, it's your person right now, because they're with you. They're the ones that your heart and mind is with. They're the person that you need right now, period. So we work with that. The reason that people call a psychic line and they ask that question is because they think that it's going to stop their suffering if I tell them no or yes. So I've learned to say, after many years on that line, it's your person right now. So now how are we going to work with this? What are we going to do to get out of this suffering without thinking logically that we can know from a psychic that it's done? That's just not the answer. And that's why you get repeat, 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 same question, same question. And I'm not bashing that. I did it myself. So I hope this video helps you understand how to kind of start dissolving it. It is only triggering you into low dimensions, so you learn to cultivate your own inner peace, joy, love. And you don't need anything externally. Or as Jesus said it, I have overcome the world. I freaking love that. Yeah, don't need anything externally to fill your cup. All right, so that's it for now. I hope it helped. Please like, share, subscribe, and until next time, take care.